Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Neptune the Chameleon.
I'm Lyssa's Lizards. And we're your Reptile girlies.
Well, ladies
And gents.
happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy podcast day.
Back at it again.
We have cause for celebration because that
We
bachelorette
do.
that you were on just had the actual wedding.
We did. It was so fun. We went up to Minnesota, which was awesome. I've never even been there. So that was really cool. And I honestly freaking loved it.
What was that summertime?
I know.
That's the best time.
thing. I think if I was up there during the winter, I probably wouldn't like it nearly as much because I am not one for the cold. But it was beautiful and stunning and so summery. And her like wedding colors were like hot pink and bright orange.
Yep, I love that.
It was so cool. And I was so excited because I like went out and like got like a couple dresses for like all the events for the weekend and stuff and made sure I was like matching the theme. And I felt very on
and your
on
nails,
theme.
your nails match the
My
theme.
nails match the theme. They're these really cute like tie-dye pink and orange. So it was very, very fun.
How does it feel to go to a wedding now that you're married? Because you went to a
So-
lot of weddings single.
Yeah.
And now you guys are married.
Honestly,
So.
that was super interesting just because like I was getting so many like little flashbacks to like our wedding and all this stuff. And it was funny because I'm really close with the bride. She's wonderful. And I could tell that she was like, you know, just a little bit like anxious because like on your wedding day, there's unfortunately like a lot of things that have to get done throughout the day, even after the ceremony that like you I felt this way and I could tell that she felt this way on her wedding day too of like, I didn't feel like I could relax until after halfway through dinner when all the speeches are done. Because that's something that you really have to like be present for. You have to be listening. You have to be paying attention. You have to like...
You're like on.
You're on.
Yeah.
And people are looking at you. And I mean, people are looking at you all night at your wedding day. But like that's a really important thing that you have to really pay attention to of just... being present up until that point, and then you can kind of let loose after the speeches.
Yeah.
And so I could tell she felt that way too, which was giving me a lot of flashbacks to mine because I very much felt that way on mine. And my dad was like late to give his speech.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was sitting there, I finally walked up to him and I was like, Dad, I know that you can't find your notes. He had lost his notes. And I was like, I need you to give the speech so that I can go have fun.
There you
Please.
go. Get it done. Get it done.
I know.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Do you feel differently listening to Vows? Because, like, as someone who's single, listening to Vows, I always, like, and I'm a mushy-gushy person. Like, that's just my personality. Yeah. But I listen to these Vows, and I have this, like, hopeful feeling of, like, to one day find my person that I feel that way. But you have Logan. So is that also kind of, like...
It's cool because
weird.
It really depends on how people do their vows, right? So like,
if they're like the pre-written ones or they write their own. That's a good point.
That makes a huge difference, and to each their own. Like some people aren't comfortable saying their own like thoughts and feelings, you know, in front of this big crowd and things like that. Logan and I did say our own, and it was like the most meaningful thing. And this bride and groom did say their own, and they were so beautiful. I was like sobbing. I was trying so hard not to cry. She had these like fans that she had made and I had helped her make them, and I was literally sitting there the whole time like fanning my face. I was like, stop crying, stop crying.
And Logan was a groomsman and you were not a bridesmaid, so that means you're sitting on your own.
I did have a very important job though. I was in charge of the tripod that was video recording the whole ceremony.
Oh, okay. That is a very important job.
It's a very important job. And so which was so fun. I got like a really good video of it, and I'm just so excited for her to see it. I think they're actually still on their honeymoon right now, and it was just so beautiful. And it's funny, I know her through Logan technically, but she and I got to be like such good friends, you know, just through like both of our boys, you know, being friends from college and stuff. And it just hearing their vows, it was just so special. I just loved that. And it's the best.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Oh, yeah, weddings are just like a whole mix of emotions. So
I just love. And I love when my friends are in love and happy, and it's the best.
It's the best.
I know.
Yeah. Well, congrats to the newlyweds.
Yes.
Very excited for you guys. Today we're going to be talking. Words are hard. Talking about tips for picky eaters. I had a total brain fart.
The way you just said that, it sounded like you were saying, today we're going to be TikToking. And I was like, what?
We are? I had no idea.
That was exactly where my brain went.
No, I was like, what are we talking about? I don't remember.
We're talking about tips for picky eaters.
Tips for picky eaters. Yes. And if you have not experienced this,
you're lucky.
That is great. So happy for you.
Good for you. Proud of you. That's super cool that you haven't had to experience the hardship.
The reality is most reptile keepers do experience some level of dealing with picky eaters. And some things are in our control, some things are out of our control. And we're going to kind of break it down. I'll take over the lizard chunk. Yes. You'll take over the snake chunk because there are nuances for sure between the different species.
There really are. It's quite a bit.
Yeah. So I've got the lizards. I know a little bit about snake eating, but not anywhere on your level. But one thing I do want to call out, just kind of like reptiles in general, is I think a lot of people are surprised by the fact that reptiles can be shy eaters.
Yes, they definitely
can. We're used to like dogs who just like inhale their food in front of us and they're like, more please, versus reptiles, you like put their food in front of them and you're fully expecting them to just like eat it, and they sometimes don't.
I will never forget bringing home Barney, my little baby nugget chameleon. I used to have to hide in the bathroom just so that I could watch him eat.
Yes.
Because he would not eat in front of me. Yes. He refused. And so I would literally hide in the bathroom and peek my little head out and be like, is he doing it? Is he doing it?
I'm having a flashback of me literally laying on the floor with my camera, like holding my arm up, like the little scope thing, you know, that thing, holding my phone up. I can't see Neptune. Just the top of my phone is poking through, and it's baby Neptune eating a hornworm for the first time because I want to watch him, obviously, but like he would not eat in front of me, and so I still have that video to this day.
I have a really funny moment that I just flashed back to that I totally forgot about until you said eating his very first hornworm. I also caught Barney eating his very first hornworm, but he literally caught me watching him in the middle of eating his first hornworm. Yeah. And so he stopped eating it and puffed up and gaped his mouth, and the hornworm, half of it was hanging out of his mouth. It wasn't falling out. It was still just in there. Dangling. And he was like angry with this little gummy worm in his mouth. And I was like, you just look cuter.
That's so funny. Like, just eat your worm. Yeah. I'm not going to eat you.
I just had to slowly back away. I was like, all right, you finish your worm, buddy.
But this is a reptile thing. And you have to remember, like, these are naturally defensive animals. So if they see a potential predator, aka us, you know, then they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, no problem. I'm just going to eat in front of you. Now, the reptiles that do eat in front of you typically are the ones that have a lower defense mechanism, defense response, because they don't see us as a threat. Yeah. And with chameleons in particular, I always try to explain to people, they've got their little googly eyes that work independently of each other. They can usually keep at least one on us, but in order to eat, they have to take both eyes and look at the food. So they have to take their eye off of you in order to eat. So that is kind of what they're experiencing.
And they're usually not willing to do that.
No.
Which is why chameleons specifically sometimes like will not eat in front of you at all. But I find it to be very similar actually with like crested geckos, gargoyle geckos, the New Caledonian geckos. Of course, it like depends on the personality and the defensiveness of the animal, but like I hardly ever catch my New Caledonian geckos eating. And because they eat so little out of their little like, you know, gecko food cup, a lot of people all the time ask, you know, my gecko's not eating. And I'm like, how do you know he's not eating? Because if he's pooping, he's eating.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And a pro tip is to use a smaller dish, a smaller quantity of food, so you can see if there's a significant amount missing. If you put a ton of food in there and they eat, you may not even notice any is gone because so much food was in there to begin with. Yeah. I've only caught Pluto eating, I mean, a good few times where I'll like hold his little food cup in front of him and he'll eat. But most nights I don't catch him eating, but I also feed him then go to bed.
Right.
So.
That's fair.
Yeah. So just keep in mind with picky eaters is sometimes they're shy eaters. So a good tip is just leave them alone. Yeah. Put their food in their enclosure in some sort of cup or dish so you can monitor if they are eating or how much they're eating, and leave them alone.
Yes.
Which is so hard because we
so
want to watch
hard.
them, and seeing them eat is
Yeah.
sometimes the coolest part of having reptiles, especially chameleons.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would say the same with snakes too. Like I love feeding my snakes. I think it's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful with it sometimes, and just, give them their time, give them their space. They'll come around.
Yep.
Just take some time.
Yes. So that's one thing. Another thing is that they're attracted to movement. We brought this up in the episode we did on live versus dead feeders, and how we recommend live bugs versus freeze-dry bugs because of the movement. Same thing with picky eaters. You can feed live bugs, but some live bugs are going to be wigglier than others. For example, doobie roaches are notorious for hiding in the corner and not moving versus a cricket or something. So a reptile may be more inclined to eat the crickets versus the roaches. And you're like, oh, they're being picky. And yes, they are, but you have to ask yourself why.
Are they just not seeing any movement?
And it's because the movement.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. And a pro tip for that is to just put a ton of roaches in there.
Put a bunch in there, or if you're using a feeding cup or anything like that, shake it up. Give it a little shake.
Yeah, a roach on its back wiggling.
Yeah, that's enticing.
That is
They love that snack.
Yeah. So having that movement is a big piece of them being picky versus not picky. And why crickets tend to be a crowd favorite, because those are going to be the bugs that move the most.
For sure. And that's, I will say, some of my New Caledonia geckos and stuff, which it's very common. Some of them may not really have an interest in insects, and some do, some don't. But I usually find the unfortunate reality is that they'll usually go for crickets.
Yeah.
Whereas, other ones they may not go for as much. But crickets are almost always just a crowd pleaser, which I think is why they're so commonly used as, feeder insects.
Yep.
Just because they just move so much and they move so frequently and they're so active that they're super enticing to almost any reptile.
Doobie roach that gets left in the enclosure and lives there for 2 years because it doesn't move.
But of course, they're just like us, It's of course, the more nutritious bug is not the most enticing one.
Yes, which brings us to our next point. Tree bugs versus more nutritional bugs, again, can determine a picky eater versus not. Now, the analogy that I always like to use is a superworm, a waxworm, a hornworm. Those are like candy, right? You literally made the analogy of a gummy worm. Now, they're not actual gummy worms, but they are higher in fat, making them, what we can guess, more delicious for the reptiles versus something like a dubia roach, a discoid roach, cricket, black soldier fly larvae. Those tend to be not as popular.
Nutritious,
Well, because they're more nutritious.
Right.
Versus the fattier bugs.
I said that wrong.
The
opposite.
Yeah. So sometimes we can think of them as being picky because they only want the yummy treat bug,
but
the
it's
candy.
Because you've got them hooked on basically their version of crack. They have their personal candy.
Exactly. So if you have a bowl of candy and broccoli,
what are you going to go
being
for?
The roaches and the crickets, then of course they're going to go for the candy.
For sure.
And then you're like, well, they're not eating the roaches. They're not eating the crickets because they don't like them. No, not necessarily. It's because you keep giving them candy.
Exactly.
So this goes to the point we were wanting to make of the tough love, right?
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done.
It's tough for all of us.
Yeah. Because we want them to eat, and we get freaked out if they're not eating, but they cannot live their entire lives on superworms and waxworms. So if you stop feeding them the treat bugs and only offer the more nutritional bugs, this is where the tough love comes in. They're not going to starve themselves. Reptiles are not going to starve themselves.
Starve themselves? No, but will they refuse it for a hot minute until it stresses you out so much? Yes.
Neptune went 2 weeks.
Dude.
All I had in there were doobie roaches because he was hooked on superworms. He would only eat superworms, and then I was like, well, sorry, kid, we're doing it. And so I only put in doobie roaches. Now, I put 15, 20 in there. I gut loaded, re-supplemented, make sure they were moving around. Yeah. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, he started eating his doobie roaches, and to this day, he will still eat his doobie roaches.
I did the exact same thing with Barney, and it was actually you who helped me with this. And he was same thing, very, very hooked on superworms. They were his favorite. He would almost always refuse roaches. He would sometimes eat black soldier fly larvae, but it was really the superworms. Yeah, but it was the superworms that he really was wanting. And so I just cut off access to all superworms. And it was at least 2 weeks. It was probably in between 2 to 3 weeks before he ate.
Yeah, and Barney at the time was a little chubby, so he did have a little weight to lose.
He was also on a diet.
Yes.
So 2 weeks was fine. He shrunk up real quick. But yeah, so it took him a good like 2.5 weeks before he would eat. And I have heard horror stories in my TikTok comments of different species, not just chameleons, but other species like leopard geckos, African fat-tailed geckos, and we can talk about those because they are notorious for getting hooked on their candy. And so, but I've heard terrible stories of basically people saying that their reptiles have gone, 4 to 6 weeks without eating, which is so stressful on our reptile girly hearts because, oh my gosh.
Well, and also people, we eat daily, multiple times a day. Our dogs eat multiple times a day. Like, it is such a, mind trip to think that people go that long without eating.
People are like, in my day-to-day life, are already shook by the fact that, like, they don't eat every day. So, like, going weeks is so stressful even to people who know that reptiles don't eat every day. They're spoiled in captivity.
Eating every 2 to 3 days or once every other week or whatever.
They do not get it that good in the wild, I'll tell you that.
And one thing to call out too is reptiles are opportunistic feeders.
Yes.
Most species. And so that means if they see food, they eat food because they don't know when their next meal are coming. They're most species are not actively hunting food. It's like, oh, here's something that landed in front of me. Don't mind if I do. I'm going to eat it because I don't know when my next meal is coming. We take that mindset and put it into captivity. See food, eat food. If we are constantly putting 15 bugs or however many, whatever, for our lizards on a daily, they'll eat them. They'll get fat. Like, it's on us to make sure that they have a nutritional diet. It is a healthy amount, that they're not getting overweight. We want lean reptiles that are healthy weight, not carrying extra weight, so that they have a long time.
It's so funny. I just took our dog Campbell to the vet. This is such a little derailment, but the way you just said that was pretty much exactly what our vet had said.
Oh, really?
Of just keeping him lean, because he's a very naturally athletically built dog, and people are so used to seeing fat dogs and overweight dogs. And so she told me, she was like, he is so lean. It is perfect. You guys have been doing such a good job of keeping him at the right weight. And so it just made me think of that, because it's the same with all of our pets.
People say that about Ember. They're like, oh, she's so little, she's so skinny.
People tell me how skinny he is all the time.
She's athletic.
I'm like, no, this is the way a dog should look.
Yeah.
But it's the same with reptiles. You got to keep them lean, because that's what keeps them healthy. And one of the things my vet said about our dog is, because of his surgery on his leg, he's prone to arthritis, and that can happen in animals if they're overweight. And so there's all kinds of health risks that can come. We've done a video, an episode on obesity in reptiles, but it just goes to show how important it is.
Yes. So those are some tips with lizards, making sure that we're feeding them a variety of bugs, making sure that we're keeping that nutrition, quantity, that movement for them, giving them their privacy. You have more experience with leopard geckos and African fat-tailed geckos. Are there any nuances you want to call out with them?
With them, it's mainly, I will say, superworms for sure, but I will say the ultimate crack for African fat-tailed geckos and leopard geckos is waxworms. Those are notorious.
Also high in fat.
They are so high in fat. It is so common. It's also, I think, for a very long time, in the chain pet stores and things like that, it was pretty much only mealworms and waxworms that you could get, which are
and crickets,
which are those two types of worms. But people with leopard geckos would tend to focus on the worms because they're easier to keep and they're not.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Crickets are a pain in the behind.
Right. Usually you can keep waxworms or mealworms in the fridge, and it's really easy.
Longer shelf life.
So, but unfortunately, mealworms and waxworms are both incredibly fatty. So if you were only feeding that to your leopard gecko or your African fat-tailed gecko, you're going to have a problem. And
good points.
And so I think just specifically calling those out for those species, because those are the ones that I notoriously see the most of, like, my leopard gecko won't eat anything other than mealworms. My African fat tail won't eat anything other than their waxworms. And it is unfortunately just the reality of you have to get them off of that, and you have to do the tough love method.
Yep.
And it is so hard. And I will say, in my, like, just from what I've witnessed of people telling me, and also my African fat tail gecko is definitely, she prefers the waxworms, and I've had to force her into, luckily she gets very confused between the waxworms and the black soldier fly larvae.
Yep.
So I'll usually, like, give her a waxworm and then give her like 3 black soldier fly larvae, and she's like, this is fine.
Wait a second.
Yeah. So you can kind of trick them like that. I will say black soldier fly larvae, in my opinion, are a really good way of tricking those 2 species in particular, because those 2 species, from what I've heard, witnessed, seen, everything, they are even more stubborn than other species.
Well, yeah, you said 4 to 6 weeks.
That's what I'm saying. Those are the 2 species that I hear of the 4 to 6 weeks, which versus, like, both of our experience with chameleons was only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, like, just be prepared if you have.
I know. The people were like, it's been 3 days. I caved. I gave them. I was like, no.
You caved too early. That was a you problem.
You gotta wait a lot longer than 3 days. You have to remind yourself, they're not eating every day in the wild. Yeah. Now, babies versus adults, a little bit different, because the babies do eat more often. Yeah. But I think as long as you're providing a variety, odds are your baby's eating a bunch of different bugs, because they're just growing and hungry, and, like, they're taking in all those calories so that they can grow quickly. Once they're at that, like, almost adult stage, that's when you can be a little stricter on, like, making sure that they're not eating just one type of bug.
By then they're already fully grown, they're good to go, they're not, desperately needing those nutrients as much and things like that. So but so when it comes to lizards,
Love it.
Those are the tricky ones.
Yeah, we've been there. Share your tips in the comments, because I'm sure you've tried things with your reptiles, your lizards. But we're moving on to snakes, because that is a whole different thing.
That's a whole other can of worms. It is.
Well, not a can of worms. They eat the mice.
A whole other
not the worms, but
rodent situation. Exactly.
Yes, another can of worms.
Yeah. So I do want to preface this just a little bit with the fact that, like, the most commonly known snake for being incredibly notoriously picky eaters are ball pythons.
Dun, dun, dun.
Absolutely. They are known for that. It is a huge, huge thing with ball pythons.
Yep.
And I don't have a ball python, so I do just want to throw that out there as, like, my own personal little disclaimer. Some of these things I have tried, some of these things I haven't. I do have a picky snake, and that is my girl Hazel. She is my Hog Island boa, and she is real weird. She prefers smaller prey, which means that I feed her more frequently than I would if she preferred to eat the prey that she could actually eat at her size. She just likes it on the smaller side, I've learned. And so I have experience with picky snakes, not a ball python, but my Hog Island boa, I've had to go through many trial and error situations with her. So,
and I think we should call out too with ball pythons, a lot of instances where they are picky eaters is not because of their actual eating preferences, but because of their environment and care and everything. Yeah.
That was literally exactly where I wanted to go with it.
Perfect.
When it comes to snakes, and I personally think that this is more so on the snake side than the lizard side, but because, like we talked about, lizards can be picky and have preferences regardless of husbandry or care. And snakes can too, but it's just less likely. Usually, if a snake has gone off of food, it is because of either improper husbandry, something, and honestly, most of the time, I see that it's a humidity issue. They're not keeping, specifically with ball pythons, they're not keeping them at 65+% humidity. That usually works wonders.
Interesting, because you think, like, temperature would be a bigger factor.
That too, but
or how their environment is set up. But, like, that's good to know.
I've always heard that people, most of the time, if they improve the humidity to the levels it's supposed to be at, they usually see improvements. And if they don't, then they need to focus on the temperature. And if that doesn't work, then you need to focus on making sure you have enough hides, you have enough hiding spaces, you have enough coverage, enough clutter in the environment.
Yeah, for them to feel safe. Yeah.
They have to feel safe and secure. And so just one really quick pro tip just on that front is, if you are using a glass or, like, transparent enclosure, vinyl that sucker up. Put vinyl on the sides and the back, just black or white vinyl. I prefer black, but put that on the sides. That helps them feel secure,
Yep,
which makes them
making
feel
those solid sides. Yep.
and that helps them feel safe enough to eat. So usually I would say like the top 2 or 3 things are going to be humidity, temperatures, and safety and security. So if you can ensure that those things are on point, then you can move into whether or not your snake is just picky.
Love it.
So that I think is the most important thing. But if you have one that's just picky, if you got a girl like Hazel, you're gonna have to go through some trials. And there's a part of this topic too that I think has to do with live versus frozen thawed, because a lot of the arguments that I'll see with like picky eaters is like, my snake will not eat frozen thawed. My snake will not eat frozen thawed. They will only eat live. And so if that seems to be the case, there are many different variations of frozen thawed that you can try. So, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think it's, just frozen thawed and you just thaw it out and that's what works.
Right.
So typically, in order to entice the snake to eat, you want that rodent to not only thaw, but be heated up to the actual body temperature of a rodent.
I remember we were talking about this
Yes.
in like the frozen versus live feeders. Yeah.
And like, for example, I have snakes that like literally do not care what the temperature is. Tarzan will eat anything. He doesn't care if it's 80 degrees. It doesn't matter. He will eat anything. Same with Taz. Hazel, it has to be exactly 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And it has to be on the smaller side. And it's like real specific.
So this is just like trial and error.
100%.
Where you tried like
Yes.
90 degrees and she's like, You tried 100 degrees.
You
she's
think,
like,
You think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding.
98. She's like, What do you think this is?
And what she'll do, and this isn't what, she'll always go for it, but then she'll drop it and then like refuses to find it again.
I remember you've talked to me.
It's infuriating.
Because you thought that she had it and you're like, okay, time to go to bed. And you wake up in the morning and like.
Yes. Well, and it's extra annoying for me too, because I always have to feed her. Literally, it has to be the last thing that I do in the reptile room that night. And all the lights have to be off, because if she sees a bunch of shadows moving around or if she sees me walking by, she'll drop it and then won't go back to it.
Oh,
so it's like I literally have to do it.
You can't even check on her. You just have to like trust that she.
And then I'll find out in the morning if it's there or not. Like, it is such a like just throw it in there, run away and pray. Like, that's all it is. I'm like, I hope she takes it.
That goes back to the lizards, right? Of like some, again, not all are shy eaters, and you have to give them that privacy because they are inherently defensive animals. And so if they feel threatened or at risk, then like, why would they be eating? They're just trying to survive first. 100%. Then they'll worry about eating.
With Hazel, I don't think it's so much of being shy. It definitely can be for many snakes. For her, I think she just gets distracted. She's like, there might be another one. I don't know. Where is it? Like, she just gets very like quirky with it, and she'll drop it. And then she's like, I don't know where it went. I can't find it. I'm like, it's literally right there. What's wrong with you? You know the drill. Another month means another set of great deals from Pangea Reptile.
In honor of the Olympics, they're offering some golden prices for crested geckos, including one of our personal favorites, Dalmatians. We talk about how live plants can be tricky for pests, so if you're in the market for fake plants, this is the time.
And for those of you with a green thumb, tons of isopod species will be on sale looking for a new home in a bioactive enclosure. There are lots of other deals, including Labor Day, over at PangeaReptile.com. So just so everybody knows, rodents, not every rodent, but like rats, mice, things like that, their natural body temperature is around 100 degrees, which seems crazy because, our natural body temp is 98.6 or whatever. So it's surprising that theirs would be like higher than ours, but I almost guarantee if you heat up your frozen thawed rodent to about like 99, 100 degrees, if you do that, it will be a lot more enticing to them.
Good to know.
That's one trick. There are also more variations of frozen thawed. So you can also, technically not frozen thawed, sorry, clarification. There are different variations of not live feeders.
Okay.
So you can do what is called, I believe, pre-killed, which basically means that like you literally go into like a reptile store and you get a live rodent and they unfortunately, do the deed in the back where you don't witness it and you get a freshly killed rodent. And that, because not only will there be, usually it depends on how they do it, but the smells are more significant. The body temperature is usually like a little bit higher. There's usually still like a little bit of blood running around in there, and like they can sense that. And so that is also an option. So if you're trying to transition a snake from live feeding over to
it's like an intermediate step.
That's like an intermediate step that you can try, which is really important. You can also try frozen thawed by scenting it with like gerbil bedding, which is so interesting. I've never tried this myself, but you can scent it. And there are even different things that you can like order, I believe, online that's like sprays or different things that have like the essence of scents. Because let's be real, guys, like most snakes are not eating only mice and only rats in the wild, right? They eat a variety of different things. So like for a great example of this is hognose snakes, right? Hognose snakes in the wild, the reason their venom is so mild is because their natural prey in the wild is amphibians, is frogs. Frogs are very different from rodents.
A little bit.
Very different. So like you can imagine that like a hognose baby like going for like a rat or a mouse feels very unnatural to it. Like that's not normal for that species. So sometimes it can be really hard to get them over to eating what is most convenient for us, which is why I do highly, highly recommend, trying different things, trying different feeders, because, that's really critical for their nutrition, in my opinion.
And totally.
It's huge. But if, not all of us can get our hands on, frogs and stuff, right? So there are, one of the other tips for those species is there's a company called Reptiles, not to give them like free advertising or anything, but they do have these links that do have frog in them and stuff like that. So there's different things that you can try other than just rodents if you're having a hard time with rodents.
Yeah,
so that's
fantastic.
That's like a good tip that you can try. And then with the scenting, you can scent them with different things. And one of the most common that I see is you can usually go into a pet store and ask, and you may have to try a couple different pet stores before they'll do this, but some of them would maybe potentially give you like the bedding from the gerbils, and gerbils or African, I think it's called African soft fur rodents or mice, I think. And so those two species, that for whatever reason, the smell of those animals is way more enticing than like a regular rat or mice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can basically put your frozen thawed rodent in that bedding or in that scent or like whatever.
I'm just imagining you're like, here you go. Over here, honey.
And also, like you said, with the lizards, movement is huge too. You gotta wiggle that thing in there, especially if it's not alive. You know, like you gotta wiggle it. Like Hazel needs a lot of wiggling. So
She's a whole show first before dinner.
She is a whole. She is a whole thing. It is. Logan knows like not to bother me on like feeding night with her because it's just a pain. But so those are some of my like pro tips for snakes. It's kind of a lot and a little all over the place, but those were the ones that kind of came like top of mind for me.
I did want to ask heating techniques for the rodents, because I'm imagining this may be the right way, maybe the wrong way, but I'm like, do you just pop it in the microwave? But then
no, do not. Anyone listening, do not do that.
But you have to imagine a new keeper is like, I need to heat this up. And then I'm just imagining rat guts all over your microwave because you microwaved it for too long. So I think we should cover some safe and recommended techniques for heating up your rodents besides.
I'm like gagging at the thought of rat guts in a microwave. Oh my God.
That's why I thought we should just circle back on that real quick just to clarify the best ways to do that.
Yep, super important. Thanks for wrangling my brain. Yes. So
not the microwave.
No.
Or your air fryer.
I mean, you might
you
be able.
An air fryer? Oh God.
No.
A little crispy.
No. So there are many different methods. You can put them on a heating pad. That's not something I've ever really done, but I do know of people who have and can do that. This is one of those things where having a temperature gun comes really in handy. I literally will heat up my rodent until I know the exact temperature because Hazel requires that. But So there are many different ways you can use a heating pad. That is like a pretty gradual way of getting it to do that. My preferred method is to put them in water, hot water, not boiling or anything, but I'll just get my sink, going up to the hottest temp it can. And then I will put them in, a tub or a bucket or something, or just like a big bowl, and just let them de-thaw in there. But the difference is the hot water, in my opinion, will de-thaw them, but it doesn't necessarily like heat up their body temperature.
Right.
So for what I do, and like I said, there's so many other ways to do this. So whatever method you use, I'm dying to know. Please leave it in the comments because there are so many methods to this. My method is I de-thaw it in hot water, and then I go and I use my hairdryer.
Okay, that was the one I was going to think was the next option.
So I will take my hairdryer and I will literally just blow dry it at the hottest, highest setting, and it smells terrible, and it is not fun, and it stinks up my whole bathroom, but it gets that temperature up real quick.
Yeah.
And in a not dangerous way, too.
Yeah, because your hair dryer is like super strong.
Mine's real intense. Yeah. So basically that for me, I've tried many different methods. That is my favorite method personally, because and I'll like flip this is so funny. If anybody ever like watches me do this, I really should do a video on this someday, but I'll like flip the rat over and back and forth and make sure that I'm getting the blow dryer on all sides so that the body temp is really, because you'll notice with the heat gun that you're using, you'll notice like where, where it's like got a cold spot or whatever. And I'm like,
forgot the foot.
heat that up real quick. So that to me has been my personal favorite method. But I would love to know your other methods, because there is, heating pad and all kinds of other different methods. So
Yeah. So 'tis the season for the Olympics. Right now we are in the 2024 Summer Olympics. I, for one, am a big fan of the Olympics.
Woo!
She's like, Olympics who? What? What's going on?
Okay, so I'm not a sports girly. I'm just not into the sports. And, I'm just not.
But the thing with the Olympics is it's not the ball sports. Obviously, ball sports are in the Olympics, but this is when you can watch something besides football, something besides baseball, soccer, and like all those sports, football's not, but like basketball's in the Olympics, soccer's in the Olympics, and I'm like, because to your point, I'm not a sports fan in the traditional sports sense. The Olympics is my time to shine, because you've got gymnastics, you've got diving, you've got trampoline, track and field, like all those sports that I actually did growing up.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so Olympics is like the holy grail.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And I'm like, finally, something that's not football.
Which I agree with, because everybody who loves football, please don't take this offensively. I hate football. I enjoy it for like a social activity, but I just like the thought of watching football on TV.
You won't catch me.
No.
I don't have a team I root for.
Nope.
We watched the Super Bowl together one year just for the halftime show.
But I've also worked in marketing for the majority of my career, and I love me a good Super Bowl ad. I'm watching for the ads. I am not watching for the game.
Not watching for the game.
And I'm watching the halftime show. This is the only thing I care about. I do not care.
So you're sports through and through. I, however, love the Olympics. I also love the Winter Olympics. I love watching the snowboarding, like freestyle, the speed skating, ice skating, because I didn't do winter sports growing up. Right. And so I just have so much admiration, because I'm just like, whoa.
I will say the winter ones are pretty enticing to me. I think the winter ones are pretty cool. I love me some volleyball. I played volleyball growing up, so I'm a big volleyball girly. I could watch volleyball, but I'm just not the one to turn it on. You know what I mean?
I was literally on my lunch break yesterday.
Yeah. If I'm turning on TV, I'm turning on a trash reality show. I'm just not turning on a sport.
No, I get that. I think because the Olympics are seasonal.
It's seasonal. It's also I understand it's historical. I know it's super important. I know it's a really big deal. I personally am just not into it. Nor do I know anything about it. So this is going to be fun.
So what I thought would be a fun segment, keeping on brand with the reptiles, is if we imagined different reptiles were competing in different Olympic events, what would they compete in? Now, I cannot do this on my own, and she's not coming up with anything. So we took it to the gram, and we asked you guys what sports, which was fun to hear your responses. So
y'all had some really good ones.
So I thought we would share with you guys, and you can kind of get our reactions to them.
Yeah.
We picked 4 reptiles to ask you about. The first one is bearded dragons. So if beardies were in the Olympics, the events that you guys thought that they would be in, the first one was the 100-yard dash.
Oh, absolutely. Those suckers are fast.
Actually, I think it should be a 100-meter dash.
Yeah, they're so fast.
100-meter dash.
Yes.
And I just imagine just like they're with the little legs, just like
their little like crazy scurry that they do when they get all amped up, and they're like across the floor.
Yes. I'm like, that tracks. They cannot do that for more than 100.
No.
I mean, obviously 100 meters would be a lot, but
100
like
meters is kind of a lot.
That's the shortest distance there is in the Olympics. So like they're not going for very long. Just a quick
100
little
feet is probably more accurate for them.
Yes.
I know that's not like a real thing in the Olympics, but
yes,
that would be more fitting.
That I thought was perfect
Absolutely.
for a bearded dragon.
The amount of I was just gonna say the amount of videos I've seen of like beardies just flying down a hallway or like whatever. I mean, it's just spot on.
Kind of reminds me of like a frilled lizard.
Yeah,
you know,
those
how they kind of do like
mm-hmm.
the run.
They totally do that. They totally do that.
The other one that was brought up is breakdancing. Now, fun fact for you, this is the very first year that breakdancing is in the Olympics.
Okay, somebody else did tell me that like somebody at work, I think, told me in the last like week or so, and I was shocked by that. Like, what? Yeah. When did that become a sport? How do you make something an Olympic sport? Like, how does that get decided?
That I do not know, but it has to go through like the Olympic Committee and everything, and
it's so fascinating because I just, of all the things that could be sports, breakdancing. I mean, I'm into it. I love a good dance off. I love a good dance show. Like, I'm here for it.
I don't think it's happened at the point of us filming this episode.
Okay.
But I did do dance as well growing up, and I can break dance just a little bit. Can do a little backspin, a little stall, you know. So when the dance floor gets like bumping.
I did all the traditional ones. I did the tap, I did the ballet, I did the jazz. I did not do the breakdancing.
I did all those. And hip hop and breakdancing. Yeah. Anyways, so I could totally see a bearded dragon doing a little breakdancing too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is just fascinating that is an Olympic sport this year. I think that's so cool.
Yes, looking forward to that one. Because I really love So You Think You Can Dance.
I might have to tune in for that one. I'm not going to lie, because that would actually be pretty cool to witness. I might have to might have to find out when that one's airing, because I wouldn't be opposed to watching that one.
What are your thoughts on synchronized swimming? No. Okay. Moving on.
I just don't even know how to react to that.
Moving on.
It makes me think of like those like creepy like movies or videos from like the 50s of the synchronized swimming. Like,
I just think that's incredibly difficult.
Oh, I'm sure.
To be treading water, to do like full stunts and like tosses in the water. Like,
there's a reason it's a sport.
The athleticism for synchronized swimming and water polo is just like unmatched.
Water polo blows my mind. I don't know how people all those things. I'm like, couldn't be me.
So speaking of water, I'll take the segue where I can get it. We're going to move on to turtles. Mm-hmm. So the sports that people picked for turtles, diving.
Yep.
Obviously. Yep. I, for one, am a big fan of diving. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of flipping sports growing up. So like the fact of like all the flips that they do, I'm like, because I can do them at one point myself. But where I have so much admiration is the height. Like the platform and the synchronized diving. To do it at the exact same...
That's
it's
crazy.
Not the same time, but the same body position. Like, all the training that has to go into that. And I'm a chicken when it comes to heights. So I'm like...
No, me too.
You got me there.
I'm weird with heights. Like, as long as there's, like, a barrier or something that, like you know, some kind of, like, fence or something. Like, I'll stand at the edge and, like, look. But if there is no fence, like, you will not catch me going that close.
I also have to plug my nose whenever I jump in the water.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Because otherwise I get water at my nose and the worst.
Oh, that's so funny.
So, also, I never did diving. But okay, so that was something someone said for turtles.
That was a good one.
Speed walking. Now, I know this is a sport, but I don't know if it's an Olympic sport.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's for sure an actual sport because they were like, going for it. But I don't know if it's an Olympic sport. But I thought that was kind of funny for turtles. I've never owned a turtle, but multiple people said
that's funny.
Speed walking.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Swimming, obvious. Turtles are aquatic. That is a gimme, no brainer.
Oh, for sure.
Love a good swimming event. And then discus. Do you know what discus is?
No, what is that?
This is a track and field event.
Oh, wait, this sounds so familiar.
It's the, like, circle metal disc that they throw.
Throw it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Isn't that kind of like the shot put or whatever?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Similar,
So in that category?
Yeah, shot put is just like a kind of forward movement. Discus is when they'll, like, spin
more
around.
like a frisbee kind of situation?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, well, they don't throw it like a frisbee, but...
How do they throw it?
We'll look up a video. But, so discus, and they were saying because, like, the turtle itself would be the discus. It's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, but it's kind of awful.
Obviously, we're not condoning throwing turtles.
Please, nobody throw your turtle.
Obviously, but it's kind of funny because they are that same shape. So
that is really funny.
Same shape as the...
It's not okay, but discus. It's really funny.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have another lizard, crested geckos. So Olympic events for crested geckos. This one I think is the best one, long jump.
Yeah, 100%.
Like literally,
that's all they do.
Jump.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
They're really freaking good at it.
Long jump. I actually had the high school record for my long jump for a little bit.
I will never forget, this isn't crested geckos, but it's similar in terms of like the jumping. I used to have a Europlatus fimbriatus, which is a giant leaf-tailed gecko. Their like jump length, it could be Olympic. It's crazy. It's great because they're already like about like a foot.
Long.
They're like anywhere between like 12 to 15 inches, I think. They can clear a room. Like they can. It's insane.
Got hops.
They got hops.
Yeah. Whew. So long jump. Perfect event for a crested gecko. Diving, specifically the belly flop. Is what someone wrote, which I was like,
absolutely.
The splat when they hit the ground.
Yeah.
Yep. Another one someone said was pole vault.
That's what. Oh, hey, excuse me, God. Oh my goodness, that came out of nowhere. I was literally thinking pole vault.
Yep.
That was exactly what I was thinking first, and I forgot about long jump.
Pole vault takes a lot of like coordination. To do it. Not that long jump doesn't as well, but like pole vault, obviously you're also working with like another thing. And crested geckos are not coordinated.
No.
So I feel like it'd be impressive if they could pull that off.
They're lucky if they have half a brain cell. They can't coordinate anything.
So pole vault, I see the thought process, but I think it's a bit of a
stretch. That's
and
fair.
Then there's a lot of comments on gymnastics, which like
for sure
can totally see that for a crested gecko.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge.
So then the last one was one that I put on my story, which was chameleons, and I got so many responses. Like probably close to 50 responses just on different sports for chameleons. So I just picked a few that were my favorite. So one was archery, but with their tongues.
Oh, at first I was like, where's that going? And then I was like, that makes sense.
So archery is an Olympic sport. That's a fun one to watch.
That's solid.
But yeah, with their tongues, which like, totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I would not have thought about that one, nor did I know it was an Olympic sport.
I know.
That's why, like, with most of these, I'm like, I don't even know what is and what isn't.
You're like, whoa.
Ooh, I don't know.
So, archery. Another answer was karate, which I thought that was funny because
they're little
karate chop arms. Yeah. When they get defensive, they like tuck in their little arm. We call it the little T-Rex, a little karate chop.
That's adorable.
Karate chop arm. Rock climbing or bouldering.
Oh.
Because chameleons are good climbers.
They are good climbers, but rocks? I don't know if they could climb the rocks. They need some twigs.
Twig climbing.
Yeah.
New sport. Submit it to the committee.
We'll get right on that.
Yeah. So rock climbing, gymnastics, specifically the beam.
I was thinking the beam. That was exactly where my head went. I was like, they could really, walk right down that beam. Mm-hmm. They could do that real well. They can't do any flips, but they could walk down it with incredible skill and balance.
Yes. Just right down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So beam, javelin throw. I think this is another nod to the tongue, kind of like shooting out.
What is javelin
Another track and field sport. It's where they throw the long, skinny one.
Oh, okay.
That's the javelin.
I have seen that. Okay,
So
I just didn't know it was called that.
Javelin. Yeah, and so my thought is someone was thinking like with their tongue, kind of like, you know.
Yeah, I can see that.
The little arms are not throwing anything.
No, they are not.
I thought this was funny just because I want to see this happen in real life. Fencing, which is the like, you know.
Yeah.
I want to say swords, but it's not like a sword. It's like it has a fancy name that I don't know the name of. But like,
I don't know. It makes me think of like, I don't know. Like, isn't that in like The Parent Trap, the movie?
Oh,
don't they fence a little?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So that's where my brain goes. But yeah.
Yes. So I think that'd be kind of cute. But I can kind of see because they like do the lunging.
Go back and forth and do the, yeah.
And so it's kind of like the fencing. Like,
I could see that.
Yeah. Okay. And the last one is the Olympic sport for winter, but we'll let this slide, is curling, which is when they throw the little like, it's like a granite kind of ball thing on the ice, and they slide across.
Oh,
and then they take the little brooms and then go.
Yeah.
And it has to like knock the other one out. That's curling. And so they were saying that, but they use their tail to push it down the ice.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So I like that.
That's a good one.
I like that one. But yeah, so that's a wrap on that. Thank you to anyone who participated in our Instagram stories. You can always follow us on Instagram and, of course, the podcast. And we like to put fun stories on there.
Yeah.
Get questions from you guys, you know, whatever else.
And you can also always just send us any messages, whatever.
Of course. But 'tis the season for the Olympics.
Yeah.
Very excited. I believe the next Summer Olympics is going to be in LA. Or is it the next one is in
I don't know.
LA? It's happening in LA at some point. Yeah, they got it submitted.
Okay.
But anyways,
that's very exciting.
Happy Olympics if you're watching, and if you're not watching, that's fine too. Hopefully you got some entertainment out of this little segment here. But
yeah, sorry I'm naive to all the sports, but it was fun and entertaining for me too.
Fun and entertaining indeed. But we are going to wrap up this episode. As always, thank you guys so much for listening and supporting the podcast. To anyone who subscribed to Early Access, we really, really appreciate it.
We love you guys.
Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you're watching over on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, anywhere else, leave us a rating or review.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will catch you guys in the next episode. I'm Neptune the Chameleon.
Lyssa's Lizards.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye, girlies.